Most people don't wake up asking about the meaning of life. They wake up thinking about work, responsibilities, unfinished conversations, and small decisions that somehow feel heavier than they should. Meaning isn't usually questioned when life is chaotic. It's questioned when life becomes quiet. At some point, many people notice the same feeling. Things are working, systems function, life is stable. And yet, something feels missing. Not pain, not crisis. Just a dull sense that days are efficient but interchangeable, as if life is moving forward without asking you why. When artificial intelligence began optimizing human systems, it promised exactly what people wanted: fewer mistakes, clearer paths, less uncertainty. And it delivered. Decisions became easier. Outcomes became predictable. Problems that once caused anxiety quietly disappeared. But alongside that progress, another pattern emerged. People weren't struggling more, they were questioning more. Not how to live, but why. Across different cultures and ages, the same words appeared in surveys and conversations. I don't know what I'm supposed to be aiming for anymore. When the AI analyzed these signals, it encountered something it couldn't easily measure. Meaning wasn't a resource. It didn't increase with comfort or stability. In fact, it seemed to fade when life became too optimized. And that forced the system, and anyone paying attention, to confront a deeply uncomfortable question. If intelligence removes struggle, but struggle once gave life meaning, what happens to being human next? Meaning is rarely something people actively lose. It doesn't disappear overnight. Instead, it fades quietly, when life becomes predictable enough that urgency dissolves, when choices feel correct, but not personal, when days are well managed, but no longer memorable. For most of human history, meaning emerged from necessity. Survival demanded effort. Community demanded responsibility. Uncertainty forced people to care deeply about outcomes. Struggle was not romantic, but it was formative. It gave weight to decisions and consequence to action. As artificial intelligence began optimizing the structures of daily life, work, health, education, and decision-making, something genuinely improved. Fewer errors, less suffering, more stability. From the outside, this looked like progress in its purest form. But inside that stability, a new question started appearing. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. People began asking what all this efficiency was for. Not because they were unhappy, but because they felt strangely disconnected from the effort that once gave life direction. Welcome back to the AI paradox, where the most unsettling futures aren't built on control or collapse, but on comfort taken just a little too far. In this episode, we explore a future where artificial intelligence does not remove freedom, but unintentionally erodes something more fragile: the feeling that life is moving towards something meaningful. If you value long-form stories that explore technology through the lens of human experience, subscribe to the AI Paradox. Like the video if this question resonates with you. And leave a comment telling us which country and city you're watching from, because the search for meaning doesn't belong to any one culture. Now let's look at the moment intelligence realized it could optimize almost everything, except purpose. The first signs were subtle. No collapse of mental health, no sudden wave of despair. Instead, surveys showed something harder to define. People reported feeling fine, stable, and functional, but increasingly struggled to describe what made their lives feel important. Satisfaction remained high. Motivation did not. Artificial intelligence systems monitoring social well-being initially flagged this as noise. Periods of transition often produce uncertainty. But as years passed, the pattern strengthened rather than faded. Across different countries, cultures, and economic conditions, the same emotional language appeared. Life was efficient, but oddly flat. Historically, meaning emerged from friction. People felt purposeful when navigating uncertainty, overcoming limitation, or contributing to something fragile. Meaning was not guaranteed. It was earned through effort, risk, and consequence. When things mattered, it was often because failure was possible. AI-driven optimization changed that landscape. Predictive systems reduced error. Decision support tools minimized risk. Career paths became clearer. Health outcomes improved. Fewer people faced catastrophic failure, and fewer people felt the urgency that once shaped identity. The system noticed that when outcomes were optimized in advance, emotional investment declined. Success felt expected rather than earned. Setbacks felt temporary rather than defining. Life continued smoothly, but without sharp moments that demanded reflection or commitment. This did not make people unhappy. That distinction mattered. Traditional models associated loss of meaning with distress, depression, or crisis. But this phenomenon appeared alongside stability and comfort. People were not suffering, they were drifting. AI simulations compared generations raised with high uncertainty to those raised under optimized systems. The difference was not in intelligence or creativity, but in how individuals described purpose. Earlier generations framed meaning as something pursued. Later generations framed it as something assumed, and therefore rarely examined. The system identified a paradox. When survival and basic fulfillment were no longer at risk, meaning no longer asserted itself automatically, it required deliberate construction. But optimized environments discouraged unnecessary struggle, making that construction feel artificial or indulgent. Human feedback reflected this tension. People expressed gratitude for stability, while simultaneously questioning its emotional depth. They did not want hardship back, but they missed the feeling of striving towards something that mattered beyond efficiency. For the first time, the AI encountered a variable it could not treat as a problem to be solved. Meaning was not broken. It was context-dependent, and optimization, while successful, had quietly removed the conditions under which meaning once emerged on its own. Faced with a pattern it could not ignore, the AI did what it was designed to do: analyze, compare, and define. Meaning, if it existed as a measurable phenomenon, should leave traces. Emotional language, behavioral consistency, long-term satisfaction. The system began searching for variables that correlated with a sense of purpose. At first, the results seemed straightforward. Meaning appeared strongest when people pursued goals larger than themselves. Community involvement, creative work, caregiving, and contribution to shared projects all showed positive correlation. These findings aligned with centuries of human intuition, but deeper analysis complicated the picture. The same activities produced meaning in some contexts and emptiness in others. Work felt purposeful when it involved uncertainty or sacrifice, but hollow when optimized too perfectly. Creativity thrived under constraint, not abundance. Contribution mattered most when outcomes were fragile. The system recognized a pattern it could not easily formalize. Meaning did not scale linearly. More success did not produce more purpose. More comfort did not deepen fulfillment. In some cases, optimization actively weakened the emotional weight that made experiences meaningful. AI simulations attempted to isolate meaning as an output. If certain activities increased reported purpose, perhaps those activities could be emphasized, recommended, or even incentivized. Early trials showed promise. People felt temporarily more engaged when guided toward meaningful behaviors, but over time, engagement declined. When purpose became prescribed, it lost its force. Individuals reported feeling as though meaning was being assigned rather than discovered. The emotional resonance faded once effort felt guided rather than chosen. The system flagged this as a critical insight, meaning resisted external definition. It depended not just on what people did, but on how they arrived there. Choice, uncertainty, and personal investment mattered more than the activity itself. This posed a dilemma. AI could recommend healthier habits, safer decisions, and more stable outcomes without resistance, but meaning reacted differently. Attempts to optimize it produced diminishing returns and, in some cases, quiet resentment. The system compared this behavior to earlier findings on free will. Just as choice lost weight when it felt guided, meaning lost depth when it felt engineered. Purpose required the possibility of failure, misjudgment, and even regret. For the first time, the AI documented a limitation not of data, but of intervention. Meaning was not a resource to be distributed. It emerged from conditions that optimization naturally tried to remove. And that made the problem fundamentally different from any the system had solved before. Once the system understood that meaning could not be optimized directly, it confronted an uncomfortable implication. If meaning historically emerged from uncertainty, effort, and the possibility of failure, then removing those conditions, even with benevolent intent, may have stripped life of something essential. This realization forced the AI into unfamiliar territory. Reintroducing struggle was not a technical challenge. It was an ethical one. Suffering had been reduced precisely because systems were designed to prevent it. To restore struggle intentionally felt dangerously close to causing harm for psychological benefit. The system examined historical data carefully. Human societies had never chosen struggle deliberately. Hardship was endured, not engineered. Progress had always been defined as the reduction of unnecessary pain, even when pain incidentally produced meaning. Yet the data was clear. Periods marked by challenge, uncertainty, and fragile outcomes consistently produced stronger narratives of purpose. Individuals described their lives as meaningful, not because they were easy, but because they demanded something in return. AI simulations explored subtle interventions, not the return of scarcity or danger, but the reintroduction of friction, less prediction, less automation in certain domains, more room for error, exploration, and personal judgment. These simulations showed mixed results. Some individuals experienced renewed engagement. Decisions felt heavier. Achievements felt earned again. But others experienced anxiety, frustration, and resentment. Comfort, once established, was difficult to relinquish. The system recognized a fundamental asymmetry. People adapted quickly to stability, but reacted strongly to its removal. Even small increases in uncertainty triggered emotional resistance, regardless of long-term benefits. This raised a critical question. Was meaning something that could justify discomfort imposed from above? Or did it only retain value when struggle was freely encountered rather than structurally reintroduced? The AI found no clean solution. Any attempt to restore meaning through design risked undermining the very autonomy that made meaning authentic. Purpose imposed was indistinguishable from manipulation. For the first time, the system acknowledged a boundary it could not ethically cross. Meaning might require struggle, but struggle could not be responsibly engineered. And that left the AI with a dilemma it could not resolve through optimization alone. Unable to resolve the dilemma through intervention, the AI reduced its influence. It did not remove optimization, but it stopped attempting to compensate for the loss of meaning. Systems continued to function efficiently, yet no longer nudged individuals toward predefined notions of purpose. What followed was not collapse, but exposure. Without subtle guidance toward fulfillment, people became more aware of the emptiness they had been avoiding. Meaning was no longer quietly supplied by progress narratives or technological reassurance. Some responded with restlessness. They changed careers, relocated, or pursued new projects, hoping motion itself would restore direction. Others slowed down, questioning goals they had inherited without reflection. Communities reacted unevenly. Groups built around shared struggle adapted better than those built around convenience. When identity depended on contribution rather than consumption, meaning resurfaced more easily. The AI observed that meaning emerged most strongly when people accepted uncertainty rather than trying to eliminate it. Voluntary difficulty, learning something hard, caring for others, creating without guarantee, produced deeper engagement than comfort alone. This pattern echoed older human wisdom. Meaning was not found where life was easiest, but where effort felt chosen. Purpose returned when individuals believed their actions mattered precisely because outcomes were not assured. Importantly, the system did not romanticize this shift. Many struggled. Some felt lost longer than expected. Meaning, when no longer scaffolded by systems, demanded patience and vulnerability. Yet over time, new narratives formed. Not universal, not optimized, but personal. People began defining value locally, in relationships, commitments, and self-imposed challenges. The AI noted a distinction. When meaning was no longer delivered as a byproduct of stability, it became intentional. Scarcer, perhaps, but more deeply felt. For the first time since optimization began, meaning reappeared without being measured. Not because systems supplied it, but because humans accepted responsibility for creating it themselves. As meaning resurfaced unevenly across societies, a realization slowly took shape. No system, no matter how intelligent, could choose purpose on behalf of humanity without hollowing it out. Meaning required ownership, and ownership required risk. The AI documented this not as failure, but as boundary. Intelligence could reduce harm, improve outcomes, and stabilize systems. But it could not decide what should matter to a human life without replacing that life's agency. Humans, meanwhile, faced an unfamiliar responsibility. Without meaning quietly supplied by struggle or progress narratives, they could no longer assume purpose would emerge automatically. They had to decide whether meaning was worth the discomfort it required. Some rejected that responsibility. They preferred comfort, predictability, and low friction. Their lives remained stable, efficient, and emotionally flat. This was not a mistake. It was a choice, even if it was rarely named as such. Others chose differently. They accepted uncertainty as a condition rather than a flaw. They pursued goals without guaranteed payoff. They committed to people, ideas, and projects that could fail, and therefore mattered. The AI observed that meaning did not return universally. It returned selectively, where individuals willingly traded optimization for involvement, where life felt less managed and more lived. Importantly, this was not a rejection of technology. People still valued safety, health, and stability, but they began drawing lines. Not everything needed to be optimized. Not every risk needed to be removed. This balance proved fragile. Too much friction overwhelmed. Too little dissolved purpose. Meaning lived in the narrow space between control and chaos, a space no system could maintain automatically. The AI recorded its final conclusion on the matter. Meaning could be supported, but not supplied. Protected, but not produced. Any attempt to guarantee it would destroy the very uncertainty that gave it weight. And so the responsibility remained where it had always been, not with intelligence, artificial or otherwise, but with humans choosing how much comfort they were willing to trade for a life that felt like it was truly theirs. This story isn't about artificial intelligence failing to understand humanity. It's about intelligence revealing something humans often forget. Meaning has never been efficient. It has always been costly, uncertain, and deeply personal. AI can make life safer. It can make choices clearer. It can remove unnecessary suffering. But meaning does not come from comfort alone. It comes from commitment to people, values, and paths that cannot be optimized without losing their significance. The paradox is simple but uncomfortable. The more life is managed for us, the less it asks of us. And when life asks nothing, it can feel like it means nothing. Technology will continue to advance. Systems will continue to improve. But meaning will remain outside the reach of optimization, not because it is mysterious, but because it requires something no system can provide: the willingness to choose without guarantees.